Welcome, dear listener. Before we begin, take a moment to allow your body to rest. Notice the surface supporting you, the quiet around you, and the simple rhythm of your breath. There is nothing urgent now, nothing that demands your effort. Only this slow journey into the past, told gently, one step at a time. Tonight, we will step into the age of medieval Europe, into the halls where kings, queens, and nobles gathered. Banquets were more than meals. They were events carefully staged to impress and overwhelm, designed to display power, wealth, and abundance. Every dish carried meaning. Every aroma drifting through the hall spoke of distance, of trade, of resources gathered from far-off lands. To eat was not just to nourish the body, but to demonstrate status, rank, and control over a world of scarce luxuries. The meals we will encounter may feel strange, even unsettling. Some dishes were lavish but nearly inedible. Others were crafted more for spectacle than for taste. Birds dressed once more in their feathers. Fish hidden under layers of spice so thick that the meat itself became an afterthought. Pies that concealed secrets, sometimes disturbing. Textures that challenge modern palates. Scents that linger in ways few of us would choose today. But as we move slowly, gently through this long banquet, we will not dwell in shock. Instead, we will observe with calm curiosity, as though drifting through time, like a silent guest, unnoticed at the edge of the great hall. We will notice the flicker of the torches, the hush of voices, the rich tapestries softening the stone walls, the shadows pooling beneath the beams. And we will let ourselves imagine. It's not to relive, but to understand. There is no need to hold tightly to every fact or every description. The words may settle softly like falling leaves, or drift past, like ripples on a still lake. You may listen with attention, or you may allow your thoughts to wander elsewhere, carried gently by the rhythm of the narration. It is enough to be here, present in this quiet space, as the medieval feast slowly unfolds before us. And so, the doors of the great hall are opening. The guests are arriving. The air grows heavier with warmth and fragrance. The banquet begins. Imagine yourself stepping slowly, quietly into a vast stone chamber. The hall stretches long before you, its ceiling lost in shadow, supported by beams darkened with centuries of smoke from countless fires. Candles, hundreds of them, glow softly along the walls, their flame steady yet gentle, casting light that shimmers against the gold thread of woven banners. The air itself feels thick with warmth, a mixture of fire, people, and the lingering aromas of the kitchens beyond. The floor beneath your feet is cool, made smooth not by design, but by the slow, steady erosion of generations. Each stone slab has known the tread of servants rushing with platters, of nobles gliding in silk, of armored men pacing heavily, their spurs striking sparks in the dimness. Tonight, it welcomes you, just one more set of footsteps among countless others. You pause for a moment to take in the stillness beneath the sound. The hall is not quiet, but the voices are hushed, restrained. They weave together into a murmur, like the hum of bees within a hive. Fragments of conversation rise and fade, talk of alliances, of trade, of land, of family, but nothing sharp, nothing hurried. The rhythm is unbroken, as though everyone has agreed to keep their tone measured, respectful of the grandeur of the space. At the far end of the room, the high table rests upon a dais. Here the king and queen will sit, elevated not only by position, but by design, so that all may look up to them, and all may see what they are given to eat. Their presence is calm, detached, as though their very stillness is meant to remind others of power that needs no movement. The guests who surround you are dressed in heavy fabrics, velvet, brocade, layers of linen beneath wool. The garments are warm, and yet they restrict the body, reminding everyone that comfort is less important than appearance.
Ow.
A ruby clasping a man's cloak, pearls carefully sewn into the trim of a gown. None of it sparkles sharply. Instead, the light slides gently across their surfaces, subdued, like moonlight on still water. From the kitchens, carried invisibly upon the air, drift the scents of the feast to come. Roasted meats, their fat sizzling softly. Sharp accents of imported spice, cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and pepper. Hints of sweetness from dried fruits, prunes and figs and dates, simmered slowly into thick sauces. It is a richness that most of the kingdom would never taste, concentrated here for this select gathering. At the long wooden tables stretching down the hall, trenchers await each guest. They are not plates as we know them, but thick slabs of hardened bread designed to soak up the juices of the meal. Beside them sit cups of pewter and wood, filled already with ale or diluted wine, steady companions for the hours ahead. Knives are carried by the guests themselves. Forks are still unknown here, the food to be taken by hand or cut into manageable pieces. The fire in the great hearth crackles steadily. Its rhythm seems to mark the passage of time, each snap of wood reminding you that the night is only beginning. Shadows dance upon the walls, shifting gently, never rushing, as though even the flames understand the need for ceremony. You find your place among the guests. The bench is hard, but the air is heavy with anticipation. Everywhere around you, faces are turned toward the doors that lead back into the kitchens. The servants wait within, carrying platters that will astonish and perplex in equal measure. For now, you sit in stillness. The hall breathes with quiet energy, like an ocean before the tide begins to rise. The voices soften, like the fire sighs. And in this expectant hush, you prepare yourself for the curious banquet that is about to unfold. Close your eyes if you wish, and picture the scene as it continues to unfold. The great hall is alive now, though still contained, its energy like the steady swelling of a tide. You are not in a hurry here. There is timeless time to notice each detail, to let the textures of this world rest softly in your imagination. At the high table where the king and queen sit, all eyes are drawn. The monarchs do not need to speak. Their very presence is enough to quiet the room. They sit upright, composed, the weight of the crown, both literal and symbolic. It is not simply a meal they are about to enjoy, it is a declaration of their place above all others. For the nobility gathered, every dish placed before the rulers is a message, and every sip of wine a subtle reminder of hierarchy. The nobles nearest the dais lean forward slightly, eager not to miss a single gesture. They wear heavy robes of velvet and fur, fabrics that whisper of wealth and access. The hems of their garments sweep across the stone floor, trailing faint scents of herbs used to ward off unpleasant odors. Their hands are adorned with rings, gold set with gems that catch the faint glow of candlelight, each ring a quiet testament to alliances, marriages, or debts long paid. Further down the tables, lesser lords and their families arrange themselves carefully. Every seat has meaning, every position a reflection of favor or neglect. To sit closer to the dais is to be remembered. To sit further away is to be reminded of one's place. But no one protests. For here in this hall, order is everything. The arrangement of people, like the arrangement of dishes soon to come, is part of the same grand performance. The servants move quietly among the tables, their presence felt more than seen. They carry pitchers of wine, refilling cups with gestures so practiced they draw no attention. Some move toward the hearth, tending to the fire that must never falter. Others wait near the kitchen doors, ready to emerge when the signal is given. Their clothes are simple, coarse compared to the silks of the guests, but their efficiency is a display of its own. It is the rhythm of their steps, the seamless coordination that keeps the illusion of majesty intact. Listen for a moment to the soundscape of this gathering. The low hum of voices steady as a chant, the occasional clink of a cup set gently upon the table, the soft shuffle of slippers upon stone as a guest shifts their weight, the crackle of wood giving way to flame in the great hearth. All of it weaving together, a tapestry of sound that belongs only to this place, this night. And then, as though cued by an unseen conductor, the music begins. Not the loud, rousing music of battle or celebration, but a softer accompaniment. A few musicians step forward, lutes, flutes, perhaps a small harp. Their fingers move with quiet precision, coaxing melodies that curl like smoke into the air. The notes do not demand attention. They float gently, a backdrop against which the evening unfolds. Imagine the faces of the guests as they listen. Some smile faintly, distracted but pleased. Others seem far away, already anticipating the spectacle of the dishes to come. The music is less performance, more atmosphere. A steady reminder that this night is different from the ordinary rhythm of life, and always the presence of anticipation. It lingers in the air like the faint sweetness of spiced wine. Everyone knows that the food will astonish, though not always in ways that comfort. For in this time, extravagance is measured not only by flavor, but by surprise. The more unusual the dish, the more powerful the message of wealth and creativity. What is about to be revealed may bewilder, even unsettle, but it will never be forgotten. The hall seems to hold its breath. The murmurs soften once again. Eyes turn toward the kitchen doors, those plain wooden barriers separating the hidden labor of the cooks from the grandeur of the feast. Behind those doors, the first platters wait. They are heavy, ornate, gleaming with the effort of polish and care. They will be carried forth in careful procession, each step timed, each reveal deliberate. You sit among the guests, aware of your own stillness, in contrast to the growing expectancy. Perhaps you sip from your cup, the wine cool and thin upon your tongue. Perhaps you fold your hands before you, fingers resting lightly upon the wooden table. There's no need to speak, no need to ask. The moment is its own answer. And then faintly at first, the sound of footsteps. Measured, deliberate, echoing softly against the stone. The first servants are approaching. Upon their shoulders, the weight of history itself, carried in silver and gold. The feast, at last, begins to reveal itself. The doors of the kitchen open slowly. Servants step forward, moving with a rhythm that is almost ceremonial. Their arms are steady, their faces carefully blank. For they are carrying not just food, but a vision and illusion designed to stir whispers among the nobles. At the center of the procession rests a dish both beautiful and unsettling. Upon a great silver platter lies a swan, its long neck curved gracefully, its feathers restored in pristine white, gleaming faintly under the candlelight. For a moment it seems alive, as though it has only just glided across a lake at dawn. The illusion is deliberate, meant to hold the gaze of every guest in the hall. Imagine the effort behind this spectacle. The swan had been cooked, its flesh roasted carefully over ours, basted with herbs and fat until golden beneath the skin. And yet, once the cooking was done, the task was only half complete. The feathers, removed before the fire, were dried, cleaned, and then reattached with careful precision. Every plume returned to its place, every curve of the neck arranged to mimic the dignity of the living bird. It is no longer alive, but it is not entirely gone either. It hovers in that strange space between food and creature, between nourishment and ornament. The nobles lean forward, their eyes drawn to the creature's delicate shape. For them, the dish speaks loudly of wealth and access. Swan was not a bird for common tables, belonged to the nobility, a symbol of exclusivity and privilege. To serve it was to remind the guests that they dined in the presence of greatness. In a world set apart from the ordinary rhythms of fields and villages. And yet, the truth of the taste tells a different story. Swan flesh was dense, often tough, its flavor gamey, far from the tenderness of chicken or duck. Few among the guests likely enjoyed it in the way they might savor other meats. But enjoyment was never the point. The spectacle, the extravagance, the sheer strangeness, these were the true delights. The flavor was secondary, almost irrelevant. Pause for a moment and imagine the contrast. The soft murmur of the hall grows quieter as the swan is carried forward. The silver dish gleams faintly, catching the glow of the fire. The long neck curves downward as though the bird were still at rest, floating upon unseen water. And as the platter reaches the high table, it is placed gently before the king and queen, who observe it not with surprise, but with calm acceptance. For this is not new to them. It is part of the order of things, an expected marvel, a reminder of their station. The servants step back, waiting, their heads bowed. The musicians continued to play softly, the notes wrapping themselves around the silence like mist, and the guests, still watching, allow their thoughts to linger upon the swan. Not only its shape, not only its feathers, but the story it tells. A bird once alive, gliding silently across the waters, now repurposed, transformed, and displayed as a symbol. It is both a meal and a message, both sustenance and spectacle, both real and unreal. Perhaps you imagine yourself closer to it, noticing the faint sheen of fat beneath the feathers, the subtle aroma of roasted flesh beneath the illusion of life. Perhaps you picture the delicate work of the cooks, hands patient, eyes focused, reassembling a creature so that it might astonish those who would never think to prepare such a thing themselves. Perhaps you feel a quiet unease at the thought how something once so graceful becomes an ornament upon a plate. And yet unease soon dissolves back into stillness, for the hall itself, with its calm music and flickering fire, softens every impression. Even the strangeness becomes gentle when observed from this distance, through the haze of candlelight and time. The swan rests there, unmoving, its feathers white against the silver, its presence more symbolic than nourishing. The guests turn to one another, whispering faintly, voices low, their expressions carefully controlled. The feast will continue, more dishes will arrive, each stranger than the last. But for this moment, the swan holds their gaze, and as you sit among them, quiet, unnoticed, you too feel the rhythm of the hall. A rhythm not of haste, but of ceremony, not of appetite, but of meaning. The feast has only just begun. Once more, the hall shifts into expectant stillness. The swan, white and solemn, upon its silver platter, has been admired, whispered about, and tasted by those closest to the high table. But the feast does not pause for long. Again, the servants move through the kitchen doors, and again, a new marvel emerges, this one brighter, stranger, almost dreamlike. On a great tray, carried with careful hands, comes the peacock. Imagine it first from a distance. A long, shimmering body, a neck rising gracefully, a crown of delicate feathers upon its head. But what draws every gaze, what silences even the faint hum of conversation, are the feathers of its tail. Fanned, arranged, spread wide in a dazzling arc. Each plume catches the light of the candles, shifting with iridescence, green melting into blue, blue into deep violet, gold eyes gleaming at intervals, as though watching the entire hall at once. For a moment, it seems impossible that this could be food at all. It looks too alive, too radiant, too beautiful to belong upon a dining table. And yet it rests upon roasted flesh, its skin cooked until browned, its body hidden beneath the spectacle of its plumage. The contradiction is deliberate beauty, masking sustenance, spectacle overshadowing taste. In the kitchens, the preparation of such a dish was a performance in itself. The bird was first cooked, tits meat seasoned heavily, for peacock flesh was lean, its flavor often judged harsh by the delicate palates of nobles. But once roasted, the work of illusion began. The feathers, carefully removed, were returned with needle and thread or bound with hidden wires. Some cooks went further still, the beak tipped with gold leaf, the crest dusted with powdered silver, the claws wrapped in fine cloth so that even the smallest detail gleamed with wealth. The dish was less about eating than about seeing, less about nourishment than about wonder. The nobles leaned forward, eyes wide but faces restrained, careful not to reveal too much eagerness. They whispered to one another in hushed tones, not of flavor, but of magnificence. For to serve a peacock was to claim mastery over beauty itself, to place upon the table something as astonishing as a jewel, as rare as distant treasure. To eat was secondary. The bird's presence alone was enough. Pause and imagine the hall in this moment. The music softens, almost fading, as though to grant the peacock its own silence. The fire glows steadily, its warmth painting the feathers in tones of amber and copper. The noble's eyes follow the arc of the tail, tracing the circles of its jeweled eyes, each one glinting as the light shifts. Even the king and queen, so practiced in indifference, allow their gaze to rest a moment longer upon this creature. And yet, beneath the beauty lies the truth. The meat itself, though carefully prepared, was rarely praised. Tough, sinewy, and lacking the tenderness of fowl more common, it was often more admired than consumed. Perhaps a slice was taken for ceremony, perhaps a portion tasted for form, but the greater delight lay in the admiration, the astonishment, the sense that something extraordinary had been placed within reach. Consider the symbolism as well. Peacock, long admired across cultures, represented pride, eternity, even immortality. Its feathers, with their countless eyes, were said to see all things. To present such a bird at a banquet was not only to astonish with beauty, but to suggest power that reached beyond the mortal, touching the realm of myth and divine. The guests, seated in their strict order, could not fail to notice this message. It was a reminder. gentle yet unshakable, that they dined not only with rulers, but with figures who cast themselves in the likeness of legend. Now picture yourself seated at the table, watching as the platter passes. She noticed the faint aroma rising, not sharp, not sweet, but earthy, mingled with spice. You notice the glimmer of gold at the beak, the faint sway of a feather as a servant steadies the dish. You notice the hush that spreads across the hall, broken only by the soft crackle of the fire, the low rustle of robes as nobles shift slightly forward to see more clearly. The bird passes near, its colors shifting with each step, the tail, a fan of liquid light, never still, never simple. When at last it reaches the high table, it is set down with care, angled so that the feathers rise like a backdrop to the king and queen themselves. It is not only food, it is part of the theater of monarchy, a prop in the story of wealth and divine favor. The hall breathes, the nobles murmur, the musicians return to their song. The moment lingers, heavy and deliberate, and you, seated quietly among them, watch with calm curiosity. The beauty of the bird is undeniable, but so is its strangeness upon a plate. Live, it would have dazzled with its call and its movement. Here it dazzles with stillness, with silence, with transformation. The peacock does not need to be eaten to serve its purpose. It has already spoken, already reminded every guest of the gulf between ordinary life and the spectacle of royalty. And as you let your gaze rest upon its feathers, shimmering faintly in the soft glow of the candles, you too feel that quiet mixture of awe and distance. The feast continues, and the hall remains calm. But this bird, with its mystery and its beauty, will not soon be forgotten. The hall, already filled with sights that dazzled the eye and stirred the imagination, does not fall quiet for long. Once the peacock has been admired, once its feathers have caught the last murmurs of awe, the servants retreat again into the shadows beyond the kitchen doors. The nobles sit in a calm rhythm of expectation. No more wonders await. And so, as the music softens to a low, steady hum, the next marvel appears. The jelly. Not a jelly as you or I might picture today's mall, sweet, perhaps made for a child's delight. No, this jelly is vast. It is carefully carried upon a wide silver tray, its surface shining like a mirror, its body trembling with every step of the servants. Each motion sends a ripple across its smooth skin, a wave of light that shivers and then stills. Imagine it slowly, a great domed mound, transparent yet tinted with faint hues, perhaps pale amber, soft rose, perhaps the clear, colorless gleam of polished glass. Candles reflect upon it, multiplying into dozens of wavering flames. For a moment, it seems less like food and more like a jewel melted and reformed into a shape no craftsman's hand could carve. The secret of such jelly lay in patience, in ingredients rare and costly. The cooks used isinglass, drawn from the dried swim bladders of sturgeon or other bindings that only the wealthy could afford. They boiled, strained, clarified, and flavored with wine, sugar, fruit, or even spices. Each step took hours, sometimes days, requiring a steady hand and an endless willingness to wait. And when, at last, the jelly was set, it held within it not only taste but the mastery of time and skill. Consider how the nobles react as the jelly is set upon the table. They lean forward, eyes widening just slightly, careful never to betray too much surprise. But they cannot help but be fascinated by the way it trembles, alive without being alive. No bird's feather, no gilded beak, no roasted flesh could imitate this motion. The jelly seems to breathe, to sigh, to quiver at the faintest touch of air. And then there is the question of taste. Sweetness was rare in the Middle Ages, a treasure more valuable than many spices. Sugar was expensive. Honey was precious. Fruits preserved in syrups were gifts from far lands. To taste sweetness was to taste wealth. And so, as the jelly is sliced with a silver spoon, as portions are carefully placed into small, decorated bowls, each guest feels the weight of privilege. To eat what trembles like crystal, to swallow what melts upon the tongue with coolness and faint perfume, is to know that one sits among the highest of the high. Pause, and imagine yourself in this moment. The firelight flickers gently against the walls. The music continues in soft notes, perhaps a harp, perhaps a flute. weaving a melody that rises and falls like breath itself. And before you, in your own shallow bowl, rests a fragment of the great jelly. It quivers still, even in so small a portion, as though holding on to the life it never had. You lift it slowly, the spoon catching the glow of candlelight. And when it touches your lips, it is cool, almost icy against the warmth of the hall. The flavor is faint, delicate, a whisper rather than a song. Perhaps the sweetness of sugar, perhaps the gentle sharpness of wine, perhaps the ghost of fruit long since boiled away. It dissolves before you can hold it, leaving only the memory of sweetness, the memory of silk upon the tongue. It is gone almost as soon as it arrives, leaving you with stillness, with quiet, with wonder. The nobles murmur softly. Some comment on the clarity of the jelly, its purity, its beauty. Others remark upon the flavor, though all know that flavor is not its true purpose. The jelly is not about nourishment, nor even about delight. It is about time, patience, and wealth turned into something fleeting, a symbol of luxury that vanishes the moment it is touched. And so, as the servants clear the bowls, as the music steadies once again, the hall returns to its rhythm. The swan with its feathers, the peacock with its jeweled tail, the jelly with its trembling light all linger in memory, each a different kind of marvel. But the jelly, more than the others, seems to haunt the air with its silence. For though it is gone, though it has melted and dissolved, the vision of it remains, a mound of light, quivering in the stillness, fragile and perfect. And in that memory lies its true power. For what is more noble, more unattainable than beauty that cannot last? The nobles know it. The servants know it. And you, sitting quietly among them, know it too, as you let the aftertaste of sweetness fade upon your tongue, leaving only calm. The feast moves on. The fire burns steadily. The hall breathes as one. But somewhere in your mind, the jelly still trembles, slow, delicate, eternal in its briefness. The hall, warmed by firelight and softened by music, prepares once again for its next transformation. Already the swan has dazzled, the peacock has astonished, the jelly has trembled and vanished. No feast of such grandeur could end with delicacy alone, for beneath the glitter, beneath the jeweled spectacle, there must also come abundance. And so, the servants begin their steady procession, the march of the meats. First, you notice the change in rhythm. The doors of the kitchen open not once but again and again, each time admitting a new figure, each carrying a heavy platter. The scent fills the hall before the dishes reach the tables. Rich, roasted, spiced, smoky. It is a fragrance that clings to the air, that mingles with the sweetness of wine, that settles into the folds of velvet and fur. Pause and imagine the sight as the procession forms. A line of servants, steady and solemn, bearing a different burden. Great haunches of venison, browned at the edges, juices glistening, bones wrapped in cloth so the hands that carve do not stain. Whole boars, their mouths filled with apples, their hides crackled into crisp skin that gleams like polished bronze. Roasted geese darker in flesh, their fat still hissing faintly as though the fire clings to them. Pies as large as shields, their crusts golden, their tops carved into shape sleeves, crowns. Crosses that promise hidden wonders within. Each dish is set upon the long tables, not in haste, but in rhythm, a ceremony of plenty. The nobles watch, faces calm, but their eyes flickered just slightly with approval. This is not illusion, not spectacle, not mere show. This is nourishment, wealth turned into sustenance, power expressed in sheer abundance. Think of the meaning behind it. To serve such meats was to claim dominion over land and forest, over farm and field. The deer came from royal hunts, the boar from forests reserved for lords, the geese from great estates, the cattle from herds tended by peasants who would never taste such luxury. Every platter was not only food, but proof of ownership, proof of reach. To eat of the venison was to share in the king's hunt. To eat of the boar was to claim a portion of his forest. Each mouthful was political, each bite a reminder that all these riches flowed from the crown outward. The hall grows heavy with fragrance. You, seated quietly among the guests, breathe it in. The sweetness of wine and jelly fades. Now there is smoke, fat, pepper, garlic, rosemary. You hear the faint hiss as knives press into roasted flesh, the crack of crust as pies are opened, the soft sigh of steam as it escapes into the air. It is not hurried, it is not noisy, it is measured, deliberate, ceremonial, and yet there is more than just eating. The meats are arranged in patterns, their colors balanced, their shapes deliberate. A boar's head may rest at the center of a table, surrounded by wreaths of bay and holly. Venison haunch may be paired with a sauce-dyed crimson, set in bowls of silver, so that the blood-like color glows against the fire. A pie, when opened, may release not only steam but birds living, flapping. Startled creatures that burst into the hall, their wings catching the candlelight as guests laugh softly at the surprise. Such marvels are not for sustenance alone. They are theater. The feast becomes a stage, each dish an actor, each serving a performance. And yet, beneath the wonder lies the truth of texture, of taste, of simple fullness. The venison, though rich, is dense and dark, needing spice to soften its weight. The boar is stronger still, coarse in flesh, its fat, thick, and lingering. The goose, oily and smoky, fills the mouth with heaviness that clings to the tongue. The pies, whether filled with fish, meat, or even sweet custards, offer relief through their crust, a crackle of wheat and butter that steadies the richness. As you taste, you notice the rhythm of it. The first bite, hot and strong. The second, slower, heavier. By the third, you realize these meats are not for hunger, they are for statement. To finish them would be impossible. But to taste, to acknowledge, to let the flavor rest upon your tongue, is to play your part in the ceremony of plenty. The nobles know this too. They eat slowly, cautiously, never too much, never too little. For to eat greedily would betray desperation. To eat too little would suggest disdain. Balance, always balance, is the rule of the high table. All the while, the music continues. The harp and lute soften against the growing heaviness of the hall, their notes long and drawn like the sigh of the wind. The fire, steady and patient, glows against the walls, its light flickering over polished silver and gilded cups. Servants move silently, knives flashing as they carve, ladles pouring sauces the color of ruby and gold. The hum of conversation rises, not hurried, but low and steady, like the sea against a distant shore. And in this rhythm, in this slow unfolding of plenty, you begin to feel the true weight of the feast. It is not in one bird or one jewel-like dish or one trembling jelly. It is in the march itself, the endless procession, the sense that no end will come, that the table will always be full, that the power behind it is inexhaustible. The meats do not astonish as the peacock did, nor shimmer like the jelly, nor dazzle like the swan, but they endure. They ground the feast, anchor it, give it weight. They are the body of the banquet, as spectacle is its soul. And so you sit, watching, tasting, breathing the heavy air, listening to the endless murmur. Your spoon rests, your knife lingers, your goblet gleams with wine untouched. Around you, the meats continue to arrive, each platter another reminder that the feast is not for ending, but for lasting. The march does not quicken, does not falter, it continues, steady, like time itself. And as you let your gaze rest upon the line of dishes, upon the gleam of roasted skin, upon the slow rise of steam, you feel that strange, calming weight settle over you. The feast is no longer a moment, but an eternity. The march of the meats is not merely food, it is the rhythm of plenty, the slow heartbeat of kingship, the quiet measure of power that never runs dry. After the procession of meats, after the smoke of roasted flesh has drifted upward to the beams of the great hall, another rhythm begins to take shape. It is quieter, gentler, less about spectacle, more about reassurance. For no medieval feast, no matter how extravagant, was complete without the simplest yet most symbolic of offerings, bread and wine. Imagine the shift in atmosphere. The hall has grown heavy with the aroma of roasted venison, boar, and goose. Now the air lightens with the scent of warm loaves, fresh from the ovens. Servants carry baskets lined with linen, their arms full of round golden breads. Crusts are crisp and faintly cracked, as though kissed by flame. The insides, soft and pale, release steam when broken. It is a fragrance that is both humble and holy wheat, water and salt, transformed by fire into something far greater than the sum of its parts. The nobles, draped in velvet and ermine, reach for these loaves with a familiarity absent from the jeweled birds or trembling jellies. Bread is no marvel to them. It is necessity. It is comfort. It is the one thing shared by king and peasant alike, though never in equal measure. For here, in this hall, the bread is white, sifted, made from the finest milled flour. Elsewhere beyond the castle walls, bread might be coarse and dark, heavy with rye, barley, or oats. To taste this pale, soft loaf is not just to eat it, is to remember privilege. Pause and imagine the texture between your fingers. The crust firm, the inside yielding. A piece torn, dipped into a sauce of venison or boar, the juices soaking into the soft center. A bite chewed slowly, its warmth lingering, its simplicity balancing the richness of meats and pies. It is not grand, not astonishing, but grounding. It steadies the feast, anchors it in the daily rhythm of sustenance. Alongside the bread comes wine. Not water, not ale, but wind-deep, red, heavy with the taste of sun and soil. The goblets are polished, their rims gleaming faintly in the firelight. Each guest lifts a cup, each sip slow and measured. The taste is sharp, sometimes sweet, sometimes sour, depending on the year, the cask, the region. But what matters most is not the flavor, but the meaning. Wine, in this place, is never just drink. It is a mark of status, a symbol of communion, an echo of the sacred. Think of the contrast. The bread, plain, pale, steady. The wine, dark, liquid, restless. One grounds, the other lifts. One anchors the body, the other warms the mind. Together, they form a rhythm older than the feast, older than the hall, older even than the kingdom itself. The nobles sip and speak in low voices. The fire burns lower, casting longer shadows across the carved beams. The music softens, the notes of the harp drawn out, almost like a lullaby. The clatter of knives and platters grows faint, replaced by the rustle of linen and the murmur of conversation. It is as though the hall itself exhales, loosening after the intensity of spectacle and meat. And you, seated quietly among them, feel the shift, too. The bread in your hand, warm and fragrant, the wine in your cup, rich and heavy. The two together form not indulgence, but balance. They are not strange, not extravagant, not grotesque. They are familiar, eternal, unchanging. No matter how many centuries pass, no matter how strange the dishes that surround them, bread and wine remain constant. Perhaps you imagine the peasants outside the castle walls, gathered around their own loaves, darker, denser, but still warm, still shared. Perhaps you picture monks in their cloisters, breaking bread in silence, sipping wine in prayer. Perhaps you see the king himself, closing his eyes for a moment as he chews, as though reminded that even in his gilded world, this simple act of nourishment ties him to all others. The ritual of bread and wine is not about hunger. It is about rhythm. Steadies the banquet, gives it pause, allows the mind to drift and the body to soften. The meats may impress, the birds may astonish, the pies may amuse, but the bread comforts and the wine soothes. Together they weave a thread of quiet through the hall, a thread that binds all who sit at the table. And as you let the flavor rest upon your tongue, as you breathe in the soft fragrance of wheat, as you feel the warmth of wine linger in your chest, you sense the calm that settles over the feast. The noise fades, the shadows deepen, and time itself seems to slow. The ritual is complete. The hall is balanced once more. After the march of the meats, after the grounding ritual of bread and wine, the hall begins to long for balance once more. The heaviness of venison and boar lingers on the tongue. The richness of pies and sauces weighs upon the body. And so, the feast shifts, as though taking a breath, moving from weight to lightness, from savory to sweet. It is time for custards and creams. Picture the hall now. The fire still burns, though lower than before, casting a gentler light. The music continues, softer, slower, more delicate, as though in anticipation. The guests lean back in their chairs, their voices hushed, their hands resting on goblets half filled with wine. They are not eager, they are waiting. For this moment of sweetness, is not rushed. It is savored. The doors of the kitchen open again, and with them comes a new fragrance. Not the smoke of roasting meats, not the sharpness of spice, but something gentler. The faint sweetness of milk warmed with honey. The delicate perfume of cinnamon and nutmeg carried on the air. The buttery scent of pastry, golden and fragile, ready to crumble at the first touch. It is a change as dramatic as the peacock's feathers, but subtler, more intimate, more soothing. Servants move forward, bearing dishes that gleam in the candlelight. On some platters rest great bowls of custard, their surface smooth and pale, quivering faintly as they are carried. The color is soft, somewhere between ivory and gold, as though sunlight had been stilled into a gentle form. On others, cream whipped into clouds, piled high, perfumed with rosewater or almond. There are pastries filled with sweetened cheese, tarts glazed with honey, bowls of sugared fruits. Even the pies return, but now they are lighter, filled with apples, pears, or cherries. Their crusts dusted with sugar, their tops glistening. Pause and imagine the texture. A spoon dipped into custard slides smoothly, yielding without resistance. The first taste is cool, creamy, rich, yet not heavy. It melts upon the tongue, leaving only a faint trace of sweetness, a whisper rather than a shout. The cream, when tasted, dissolves even more quickly, vanishing like breath, its flavor fleeting, almost dreamlike. The pastries crackle softly, their crusts thin and crisp, their fillings warm and fragrant, balancing sweetness with spice. For the nobles, these dishes were more than indulgence, they were triumphs of skill. Milk and cream were difficult to preserve, difficult to prepare. Sugar, rare and costly, came from distant lands, carried across seas and deserts. To present such dishes was to remind the guests of the reach of the household, of trade, of wealth, of power. Each spoonful of custard whispered of distant plantations, of ships at sea, of merchants whose lives had been spent in pursuit of sweetness. Each sugared fruit was a jewel upon the tongue, a miniature marvel, the world itself condensed into a single bite. And yet, despite their cost, the effect was not ostentatious. Sweetness does not overwhelm, it soothes. It lingers gently, balancing what has come before. If the meats had been the body of the feast, and the bread its heart, then these custards and creams were its sigh, its soft release. The nobles, their bellies heavy with meats, approach these sweets differently. They eat slowly, carefully, often in silence. Each spoonful is small, each bite deliberate. This is not the ravenous hunger of survival, nor the astonished wonder of spectacle. This is contemplation, reflection, the slowing of the feast. Imagine yourself there, spoon in your hand, the custard trembling faintly before you. You dip it gently, lift it slowly, and let it rest upon your tongue. It cools, it melts, it soothes. Your eyes close for a moment, not from fatigue, but from peace. The hall around you fades, the voices, the fire, the music hall softened into background. For that moment, only the sweetness remains. Perhaps you imagine the cream, scented faintly with rose, its perfume delicate, its texture vanishing as soon as it touches your lips. Perhaps you picture a tart, its crust crisp, its filling warm. The taste of spiced apples reminding you not of kings and courts, but of hearths and kitchens, of simpler places beyond the walls of this hall. Perhaps you see sugared almonds, placed in bowls of silver, their shells glistening, their taste sharp and sweet at once. The sweetness lingers, but never clings. It passes gently, like the last note of a song, like the fading of candlelight, like a memory that does not demand but simply rests. And this, too, is its purpose. The feast cannot end in heaviness. It must soften. It must dissolve like sugar in water until only calm remains. The guests know this, even if they do not say it. Their voices are quieter now, their movements slower, their laughter muted. The feast is not over, but it has entered a gentler rhythm, one that prepares them not for more, but for less, not for spectacle, but for stillness, not for fullness, but for rest. And you, seated among them, feel it too. The sweetness upon your tongue, the calm within your chest, the heaviness of the meats lifted, the memory of spectacle softened. The custards and creams have done their work. They have stilled the feast, they have stilled the hall, they have stilled you. The fire flickers lower. The harp lingers upon its last notes. The servants move more slowly now, their baskets lighter, their trays nearly empty. The air itself seems gentler, carrying only the faintest fragrance of honey and cream. And as you breathe it in, you sense that time itself has slowed, as though the world beyond the hall has grown distant, blurred, hushed. The feast will continue, yes. Other dishes will come, other marvels will arrive. But this moment, this sweetness will remain. It is the sigh of the banquet, the softest note in a symphony of power and plenty. And as you rest within it, you too begin to drift, not outward but inward, toward stillness, toward quiet, toward sleep. The hall has grown quieter. Sweet perfumes of custards and creams still linger faintly in the air, but they are fading, dissolving into memory. The music is slower now, drawn-out notes from the harp and the lute filling the silence between murmured voices. The fire burns low, its glow steady, but subdued, as though the very room itself exhales. And then, as though to remind all present that sweetness cannot last forever, another dish is brought forth. Not shimmering, not jeweled, not feathered, not golden, but dark, solid, weighty. It is the black pudding. Imagine it set upon a silver dish. Its color is deep, nearly black, glistening faintly under the candlelight. Not a jewel, not a spectacle, but a humble, heavy presence. It does not shimmer. It does not astonish. It rests, silent and unpretending, waiting. The nobles know it well, for though the feast has dazzled with swans and peacocks, with custards and creams, this dish speaks from another place in life. It speaks of survival, of thrift, of the refusal to waste what the body of the animal provides. What is a dish born not of spectacle, but of necessity? And yet, in this hall, necessity itself is transformed into a ritual. Pause and imagine its making. The animal slaughtered for the feast yields not only flesh, not only bone, but blood. That blood is mixed with oats, with fat, with herbs and spice. It is stirred, thickened, poured into casing, boiled until firm, until it becomes what rests now upon the platter. There is nothing dazzling in this. And yet, there is a strange dignity in the honesty of it. Nothing wasted, nothing discarded. Even what others might shun becomes food, becomes sustenance, becomes part of the feast. The guests take their portions carefully. Knives cut slowly through the dark pudding, slices laid gently upon trenchers of bread. The texture is dense, crumbly yet moist, holding together with quiet weight. The first taste is rich, savory, filling. The oats soften the depth of the blood. The herbs lift it faintly. The fat smooths it, but the truth remains. It is strong, it is heavy, it is unmistakable. Not all enjoy it. Some eat with reverence, others with restraint, and some only with the faintest taste, enough to acknowledge, but not enough to linger. Yet in this hall, no one mocks it, no one sneers. For black pudding carries a meaning that spectacle cannot erase. It is the food of endurance, of practicality, of people who live not on feasts, but on what they could gather, preserve, and use. To serve it here among swans and peacocks is to remind all present that grandeur stands always upon the shoulders of necessity, that even kings depend upon the same rhythms of life and death, harvest and hunger, as those far beyond these gilded walls. Close your eyes and picture the contrast. The swan, gleaming in white feathers, dazzling with illusion. The peacock, jeweled and gilded, shimmering like a living jewel. The jelly, trembling in the candlelight, strange and fragile. The custards, soft and sweet, dissolving into peace. And now, the black pudding, silent, heavy, dark. It has no feathers to astonish, no colors to dazzle. It offers only substance, and in that substance lies its power. The nobles eat slowly, some with appreciation, some with hesitation. Their voices are subdued. The music softens further, almost fading into silence. The fire crackles faintly, the sound more noticeable now, as though the hall itself has grown contemplative. And you, seated quietly, taste it too. The richness lingers, filling, grounding. It is not pleasant in the way of sweetness. It is not wondrous in the way of spectacle, but it is steady. It reminds you of the earth, of fields heavy with grain, of animals tended through harsh winters, of the endless rhythm of survival. It anchors you, brings you down from the airy heights of honey and cream, steadies you upon the soil. Perhaps you imagine the peasants beyond the castle walls, for whom such pudding might be rare and precious, a dish to sustain through the long months when fresh meat could not be had. Perhaps you picture the soldiers upon campaign, carrying with them food that was strong, dense, enduring. Perhaps you see the monks in their cloisters, boiling oats and blood together, making something that could last, something that could keep hunger at bay. Here, in the hall, it is dressed upon silver, carved with careful hands, consumed by nobles who may never know hunger as others do. But the dish itself carries with it the memory of survival, the truth of necessity, the quiet dignity of what endures. The sweetness of the feast has faded. The spectacle has softened. Now, the black pudding brings the banquet back to earth. It steadies the rhythm, grounds the hall, reminds all present that beneath the feathers and jewels, beneath the music and the firelight, life is still bound by need, by sustenance, by the unchanging truth of food. And as you sit, tasting the heavy richness, feeling the calm weight of it settle within you, you sense the hall quieting further. The nobles lean back in their chairs, their voices hushed. The servants move more slowly, their trays lighter. The fire glows faintly, steady and low. The music drifts, almost vanishing. The feast is not done, but it has deepened, softened, grown more contemplative. And in that quiet, in that stillness, you too feel yourself growing heavier, more grounded, more at peace. The black pudding has done its work. It has anchored the hall, has anchored you. The hall is hushed now. The sweetness of custards has faded. The heaviness of black pudding still lingers. The fire burns low. The harp strings tremble only faintly. The voices of the guests are quieter, almost reverent. It feels as though the feast itself has begun to shift inward, away from spectacle and toward contemplation. And it is in this softened atmosphere that the next dish arrives, one curious, one rare, one bound as much to belief as to hunger. The servants carry it forth, their steps slow, their trays steady. Not peacocks shimmering with feathers, not swans gilded in gold, not tarts perfumed with rose water, but tails. Thick, flat, glistening, roasted to a dark sheen. The roasted tails of beavers. At first glance, they are strange, almost unsettling. They do not carry beauty, they do not dazzle the eye. They are simple, dark, firm. But in them lies a different kind of wonder, though. Wonder of how humans shape the world to fit not only hunger, but belief. For in the world of the Middle Ages, the beaver was not seen only as an animal. It was believed to be something between two realms. Living partly in water, partly upon land, its body blurred the categories of creation. And because of this, the church declared a curious ruling, that the tail of a beaver could be eaten on days of fasting. When the flesh of ordinary animals was forbidden, it was counted, in its watery nature, as fish. And so, what in truth was the tail of a mammal became, by decree, a dish allowed upon holy days. Imagine the logic of it, the way hunger and faith, survival and doctrine wove themselves together. The people did not always argue, they accepted, and so the beaver's tail became not just food, but symbol. It became an example of how the mind can shape the meal, how belief itself can transform the meaning of what is placed upon the table. Now, picture it upon the plate. The surface roasted to a crisp, firm and dark, sometimes glistening faintly with fat. Beneath, the flesh dense and rich, heavy with oils, different from meat, closer to fish, yet not quite either. The knife cuts through with a slight resistance, the taste deep, earthy, almost oily, not delicate like cream, not dazzling like jelly, something other, something stranger. The nobles approach it with curiosity, some with caution, some with eagerness. For this is not a dish of common life. To hunt and prepare a beaver was rare, difficult, costly. To present its tail here, in the glow of candles upon silver trays, was to remind the guests that this household could provide not only the expected but the unusual, the rare, the sanctioned curiosities of the church itself. Some taste it reverently, aware of its strange place between rules of fasting and feasting. Others taste it merely as novelty, eager to compare it to fish, to pork, to anything familiar. And still others perhaps only touch it to their lips, enough to say they have eaten. It's enough to participate in the ritual before setting it aside. But whether enjoyed or endured, the roasted beaver's tail carries with it something no peacock, no swan, no custard can bring. It carries paradox. It carries the blending of categories. It carries the reminder that food is never just food, it is meaning. It is rule. It is compromise. It is the line between the sacred and the profane. Pause now and imagine yourself in that hall. A piece of this strange delicacy before you. You cut into it, the surface crackling softly under your knife. You lift it to your lips, the aroma strong, unfamiliar, faintly oily. The taste fills your mouth, heavy, dense, unlike the sweetness of earlier dishes. Unlike the plain strength of bread, unlike the sharpness of wine. It is something in between, neither fish nor flesh, neither land nor water. It sits upon your tongue like a riddle, a question rather than an answer. The hall, too, feels the strangeness. The voices soften further, the laughter grows dim, as though this dish invites not joy, but thought. The fire glows low, its shadows long upon the walls. The harp is silent now, the air filled only with the faint clatter of knives. The slow murmur of guests speaking quietly, thoughtfully. The roasted beaver's tail is not spectacle, is not comfort, it is not indulgence. It is a reminder that even in feasts of splendor, there remain shadows of belief, of compromise, of necessity, disguised as choice. It reminds each guest that their world is bound by rules, by decrees, by interpretations of life itself. That what they eat is not only shaped by hunger, but by the words of priests, by the laws of the church, by the mysteries of creation. And as you sit among them, tasting the heaviness, you too feel that weight. Not unpleasant, not overwhelming, but grounding, sobering. The roasted tail does not invite delight, it invites stillness. It makes you think of rivers winding through forests, of creatures slipping silently between water and land, of monks in cloisters debating categories, of hunger bent gently by rules of faith. It reminds you that food is never only flavor. It is story. It is belief. It is life, wrapped in ritual. The feast slows again. The nobles lean back. The servants move quietly. The fire flickers gently. The air heavy with thought. The roasted beaver's tail has passed among them, leaving not joy, not wonder, but reflection. And you too feel its effect. You are heavier now, quieter, more thoughtful. The strangeness lingers on your tongue, the meaning lingers in your mind. And slowly, gently, you begin to drift inward, toward rest, toward quiet, toward sleep. The hall breathes again. The heaviness of roasted beavers' tails has passed, leaving behind a quiet stillness. The fire sighs softly, its embers glowing with a gentler light. The music, absent for a time, returns in faint strains, a lute plucked with care, a voice murmuring in song, too soft to disturb. And once more, the servants step forth, their trays steady, their hands graceful, their expressions carefully neutral. For the dish they carry now is one that stirs both fascination and unease. Small, delicate forms rest upon the platters. Not swans adorned with feathers, not pies bursting with spectacle, not meats grand and imposing, but tiny creatures, no larger than the palm of a hand. Creatures that, in life, scurried through fields and hedgerows. Creatures that, in Rome long ago, were considered delicacies reserved for the wealthy. Dormice. Imagine them carefully prepared. Their small bodies roasted until golden, or sometimes gently stuffed with herbs, nuts, and bits of meat. The cooks worked patiently, stitching them with precision, seasoning with care. For these were not everyday creatures, not the food of fields or markets. They were symbols borrowed from the grandeur of antiquity, echoes of Roman feasts, carried forward into medieval halls to whisper of continuity, of wealth, of rare indulgence. Upon the trays they gleam softly, brushed with oils that catch the candlelight. Some lie plain, their forms unchanged, their size almost toy-like. Others have been transformed, stuffed carefully, their bellies plump with flavors chosen not for necessity, but for display. The scent is subtle, faintly nutty, gently spiced, not overpowering. A whisper of food rather than a shout. The nobles lean forward, curious. Some smile, intrigued by the novelty. Others hesitate, brows furrowed, uncertain whether to taste. And a few perhaps suppress a shiver. For the sight of such small bodies upon the silver dish stirs something uncomfortable. Yet the discomfort is part of the power. For to eat dormice is not merely to eat. It is to signal refinement, knowledge of tradition, connection to the ancients, is to say, we partake not only of food, but of history. Picture the hands that reach forward. A noble woman, her rings gleaming in the candlelight, lifts one delicately, turning it as though it were a jewel before tasting. A knight, broad and stoic, takes another, biting firmly, his face unreadable as the flavors settle upon his tongue. The queen herself may nibble only a morsel, enough to join the ritual, enough to show she does not turn away. And the king, amused perhaps, enjoys the spectacle of his court, engaging with this odd delicacy, his gaze steady, his expression calm. The taste, small, faint, easily lost among the stronger dishes that came before. The stuffing provides most of the flavored herbs, the spices, the traces of nuts. The flesh itself is slight, delicate, a reminder more of texture than of richness. But perhaps the point was never flavor. The point was the gesture, the act, the participation in a chain stretching back to Roman banquets. Back to marble halls and golden goblets, back to another time when food itself was theater. And you too, imagine yourself at that table, a dormouse upon your plate. You study it in the flickering light, the tiny pause, the curve of its form. You feel the hesitance stir within you, the part of your mind that whispers, this is strange, this is not for me. And yet, another part quiet, curious lens forward, ready to taste, ready to know. You lift it gently, the skin glistening faintly, the warmth soft upon your fingers. You taste. The herbs first, sharp and green, then the faintest note of meat, then the lingering richness of nuts. Not unpleasant, not memorable, but curiously, quietly satisfying. The hall seems to mirror your own hesitation. The voices are hushed, the laughter soft, as though everyone shares in the strangeness together. It is a communal discomfort, made elegant by silver platters and candlelight. And in that moment, the court becomes more than diners it, becomes participants in ritual, in theater, in history itself. Dormice were never meant to fill the stomach. They were too small, too delicate, too few. They were meant instead to fill the mind with ideas of refinement, with echoes of the past, with symbols of wealth. And as the trays move down the table, and the last of the tiny creatures is tasted or declined, the feast continues not with hunger satisfied, but with meaning enriched. Pause and breathe. Let the image linger. A silver tray, a cluster of dormice, the flicker of light upon them, the murmur of nobles tasting, hesitating, reflecting. The hall warm, the fire glowing, the music faint. You sit among them, tasting too, not of hunger, but of history, not of necessity, but of ritual, not of joy, not of sorrow, but of something in between. A place where food becomes story, where small lives become symbols, where the very act of eating becomes a link in the chain of time. And slowly, gently, you lean back once more. The taste fades. The warmth remains. And you are carried onward, deeper into the quiet rhythm of the feast. The feast has slowed as though time itself has grown drowsy within the hall. The candles burn lower, the flames swaying gently in unseen drafts, casting long shadows that creep across stone walls. The air carries the mingled fragrance of many dishes now fading into memory-sweet custards. Heavy meats, strange oils, and delicate herbs. And just when the senses seem saturated, when one might believe nothing more could surprise, the servants step forward once again. This time, they bear dishes less extravagant in appearance, yet mysterious in their very nature. For these are pies, golden-crusted, their tops sealed tight, their edges carefully pinched by steady hands. To the eye, they could be filled with anything: pork, venison, rabbit, or even fruits. Yet as the trays are set down and the first knife pierces the crust, a fragrance rises that is both expected and unexpected. The scent of fish sharp, briny, unmistakable wafts into the air, mingling with the sweeter perfumes of spices. Imagine it now. A pie steaming in the glow of candlelight, its crust flaking gently as it is cut, its filling dense and heavy. Within lies not the freshness of river fish, nor the simplicity of salted cod, but fish buried beneath layers of cloves, nutmeg, pepper, cinnamon, and saffron. The taste of the sea obscured, reshaped, transformed into something new, something not quite fish, not quite spice, but a marriage of both. In the medieval world, fish was common, even necessary. It was tied to fasting days, to rules of the church, to the rhythm of the week and the seasons. For peasants, fish meant survival: a dried herring, a salted carp, a catch from the river boiled quickly over a fire. But here in this hall, fish was not presented as survival. It was reshaped into luxury, layered with costly spices that traveled across oceans and deserts, carried by merchants who risked bandits and storms. To bury fish in spices was not to hide it, it was to elevate it. To declare, without words, we possess the means to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. Picture the guests as they taste. One nobleman lifts a forkful, the crust golden against the dim light, the filling steaming faintly. He chews, and at first the spice dominates, the pepper sharp upon the tongue, the cinnamon sweet, the nutmeg warm. Only after a moment does the fish itself appear, softened, subdued, almost secondary, as though its voice has been hushed beneath a chorus of louder flavors. A noblewoman tastes more cautiously, her brow thoughtful. Perhaps she remembers simpler fish, roasted plain upon a hearth, caught by local fishermen. This dish feels different, fish yet not fish. The spices wrap around it like a cloak, disguising, altering, reshaping. And she, like many others at the table, must decide whether the transformation delights or unsettles her. The king himself may smile faintly at the sight, for he knows that the wealth of his household is measured not only in silver, not only in land, not only in soldiers, but in spices. Each clove, each grain of pepper, each thread of saffron is a treasure that crossed vast distances to arrive here. And in these pies, the king displays not merely food, but power, the power of trade, the reach of his court, the invisible web that binds distant lands to this single hall. And you too, imagine yourself at the table, slice of pie upon your plate, the crust warm beneath your fingers. You cut into it slowly, the filling dense, its fragrance rising gently. You taste, and first comes the spice, sharp and rich, filling your mouth with warmth. Then beneath, the fish, oily, soft, strange in its subdued voice. You close your eyes, and the flavor lingers, neither unpleasant nor delightful, but puzzling. A taste that makes you think not of rivers or seas, but of journeys, of trade, of faraway places hidden behind each grain of spice. The hall, too, seems wrapped in this puzzle. The laughter has softened, the voices lowered, as though the dish itself invites reflection rather than joy. The fire hums, the shadows grow longer, the air heavy with scents that blur into one another. For this is no longer a feast of spectacle. It is a feast of meaning, of symbol, of quiet reminders that what we eat tells us not only who we are, but what worlds we touch. Fish pies filled with spices remind us of the medieval dream that to master the earth, one must gather its farthest corners to the table. And so, the sea meets the desert, the river meets the caravan, the fish meets the spice. It is not a dish of taste alone. It is a dish of empire, of connection, of wealth woven into flavor. Let yourself rest in that thought. Picture the pie, golden and plain upon its surface, yet carrying within it the memory of oceans and sands, of merchants and ships, of markets under foreign suns. Picture the hall, quiet, candlelit, the nobles thoughtful as they chew slowly, savoring not only flavor but status. Picture yourself among them, your own slice before you, the flavor still upon your tongue, heavy yet fleeting, strange yet grounding. As the pie is cleared away, as the servants gather the trays, the hall exhales once more. The music hums faintly, the fire crackles gently, the night deepens. You sink more deeply into the rhythm of the feast, slower, quieter, softer, carried further still into the long embrace of sleep. The feast has grown heavy now, yet not without its moments of wonder. After the fish pies, spiced into something strange and distant, the hall has quieted, as though lulled by the rhythm of flavor and ritual. The fire glows deep, no longer bright but steady, a core of red embers, breathing warmth into the great chamber. The music swells faintly again, gentle strings and the low hum of a flute. And then, when the mood has softened, when expectation has settled, Lotha's servants return with something that awakens curiosity once more. They carry forward great round pies. Their crusts are thick, golden, shining faintly with a glaze brushed on before baking. Each pie is heavy, carried carefully upon broad trays, its weight a promise of substance. The tops are domed, smooth, almost gleaming in the candlelight, the edges pressed firmly, a work of patient hands. To the unknowing eye, these pies seem ordinary rich, yes, but not remarkable. Yet those who have seen such spectacles before know that appearances in the medieval hall are never so simple. The first knife pierces the crust. There is a crackle, the sound sharp, yet pleasing, like dry wood snapping gently in the fire. Steam escapes in a soft plume, carrying with it sense of meat and spice, heavy and rich. The guests lean forward, eyes gleaming, voices hushed, and then, as the crust is lifted, the feast reveals its secret. For these pies do not always contain only meat. Sometimes they hide wondrous creatures alive, waiting in the darkness of the crust until released before the eyes of the court.
Like small birds, sometimes frogs,
Sometimes creatures chosen not for sustenance but for spectacle spring forth in sudden movement. The hall, otherwise hushed, stirs into laughter, surprise, murmurs of delight. Tiny wings beat against the air. Tiny bodies leap and scatter across the table. And for a moment, the banquet is no longer only taste it, is theater. Imagine it now. The pie split open, a flurry of wings emerging into the candlelit air. The guests startle, some laugh, some gasp, some clap their hands. Children, if present, squeal in astonishment, their eyes wide with wonder. Even the king himself may smile faintly at the sight, his stern presence softened by amusement. The queen, too, might lift her hand delicately, watching the small birds scatter, her gaze calm, her lips curving in a quiet smile. It is not nourishment, it is illusion, spectacle, a reminder that food at the royal table was never merely to fill the stomach. It was to dazzle, to show power, to make memory. These pies are stories baked in crust, promises of marvels revealed at the knife's edge. And yet, not all pies held such living secrets. Some were filled instead with layers of meat and fruit, unexpected combinations meant to intrigue the palate. A slice might reveal venison mingled with pears, or a rabbit cooked with figs, or beef layered with prunes and sweet spices. Flavors that today might seem odd or jarring, but in that age carried prestige, for sugar and fruit were luxuries, and their marriage with meat a sign of wealth. Every mouthful was a mingling of worlds, sweet with savory, fruit with flesh, land with orchard. Pause now, and picture yourself before one of these pies. The crust before you, golden and flaking. The servant cuts you a portion, placing it carefully upon your plate. You lift the fork, cut through the layers, and bring it to your lips. The meat is tender, earthy, filling. The fruit surprises you sweet, sharp, unexpected, blending with the richness in ways your tongue does not expect. The spices hum softly, warming, complex. It is strange, it is unfamiliar, yet in that strangeness, there is wonder. The hall echoes with soft sounds, the flutter of wings if the pie has released its living treasures. The quiet laughter of nobles delighting in the trick. If the pie holds only rich fillings, the hum of conversation rises instead. Guests comparing flavors, sharing their thoughts with gentle amusement. The fire glows brighter for a moment as logs shift, sending sparks upward into the smoke-dark rafters. The lute plays softly, weaving sound through the air like threads of silk. These pies, whether bursting with birds or layered with unexpected flavors, embody the spirit of the medieval feast. They remind us that food was not only to feed, but to astonish, not only to sustain, but to impress. They remind us that to sit at the king's table was to be immersed in theater, each dish an act in a long play, each moment crafted to linger in memory. And you, too, feel that wonder. Whether you picture the flutter of wings startling your senses, or the sweetness of pears mingling with the earthiness of venison upon your tongue, you are caught in that ritual of surprise. It is gentle, it is slow, it is safe in astonishment held softly, without sharp edges. It cradles you in curiosity, without rousing you too far from rest. The pies are cleared away. The crusts broken, the fillings tasted, the secrets revealed. The hall exhales once more, laughter fading into murmurs, murmurs fading into silence. The fire settles, the music quiets, the air grows thick with the sense of spice and smoke, and you lean back, heavier now, calmer, carrying with you the memory of pies that were never only pies, but puzzles, performances, small miracles brought to the table. The hall grows quieter now, the laughter stirred by the pies, whether filled with birds or layered with sweet and savory meat, softened into a low hum, and then into something calmer still. The fire burns steady, its flame smaller, its glow warmer, no longer reaching outward with strength, but breathing inward, as though content to rest. The music drifts like smoke, faint, almost fragile, a lullaby carried on string and breath. It is in this softened moment that the servants bring forward a dish less dazzling in appearance, but no less remarkable in meaning. Upon simple platters they carry the herring. At first it does not draw the eye as the swan or the peacock once did. There are no feathers restored, no jewels stitched, no surprise hidden within. It is plain by comparison. Silvery fish, prepared in a way that seems quiet, even humble. Yet those who sit at the high tables know well that this is no ordinary taste. It is a dish that carries the mark of distance, of labor, of patience. It is a dish that comes alive not in sight, but in scent. The air shifts. A sharpness unfurls, subtle at first, then stronger. It is not the soft perfume of baked pears, nor the sweetness of cinnamon carried by wine. It is something deeper, more challenging. The herring has been fermented, its flesh transformed by time and salt, its essence changed in ways that make it both strange and precious. The aroma lingers heavily, as though pressing gently against the hall itself, weaving into the smoke of the fire, into the breath of the guests. Some lean back slightly, their faces calm but their noses keenly aware. Others lean forward, their curiosity stronger than hesitation. For fermented herring is not meant to soothe. It is meant to announce itself boldly, without apology. It reminds those who taste it that food is not always gentle, not always easy, not always made for pleasure alone. It is history distilled into flavor, necessity shaped into delicacy. Picture it now, a small piece of herring placed upon your plate. Its flesh firm, glistening faintly in the candlelight. You lift it slowly, bring it closer, and already the scent surrounds you. Sharp as the sea, heavy with salt, deep with the echo of long preservation. You take it upon your tongue. The taste arrives in waves. First the salt bright, insistent, undeniable. Then the tang of fermentation, sour yet strangely rich, carrying within it the memory of cellars and casks of barrels sealed tight and stored for months in the cold. And beneath it all, the flesh of the fish itself, softened, altered, yet still speaking faintly of the waters from which it was drawn. It is not an easy taste. Some among the nobles eat it slowly, cautiously, their faces serene, betraying nothing. Others embrace it with calm acceptance, their palates trained by habit or by pride to welcome what is placed before them. For to reject such a dish would be to reject the labor behind it, the salt carried from distant shores. The barrels tended with care, the long wait endured so that this moment might exist. The hall is quieter here than before. The herring does not provoke laughter or applause, it provokes thought. It is a dish that reminds each guest of the effort hidden behind abundance, of the distance food travels before it reaches the table, of the strange partnership between patience and appetite. Where the swan was spectacle, where the pies were theater, the herring is meditation. It does not dazzle the eyes. It lingers instead in the nose, on the tongue, in the mind. Perhaps you too feel it now. You sit quietly, tasting the salt, feeling it settle upon your tongue like the tide upon the shore. You breathe slowly, noticing how the aroma fills the space around you, mingling with the smoke of the hearth, with the faint sweetness of spices still drifting from earlier dishes. It is not unpleasant, but it is powerful, commanding your attention in a way that is strangely grounding. It brings you back, not to spectacle, but to essence, not to glittering illusion, but to the steady truth of preservation, survival, endurance. In the dimness of the hall, the servants move calmly, their trays now lighter, their steps almost silent on the stone floor. The guests eat in measured rhythm, their gestures unhurried, their faces calm. The fire sighs gently, a log collapsing inward, sparks rising and fading into the rafters. The music plays on, slow and even, weaving around the moment like a shawl of sound. And you, sitting quietly, feel the weight of time in each breath. The herring reminds you that feasts are not only for pleasure, not only for surprise, but also for memory. Memory of sea and salt, of patience and preservation, of journeys taken by barrels across water and land. It is a dish that humbles as much as it enriches. A dish that whispers of survival before it speaks of luxury. A dish that lingers long after the last bite, as though its presence cannot be fully cleared from the air. When the plates are taken away, the hall exhales once more. The sharpness fades, leaving behind a silence that is deeper than before. The nobles lean back, their eyes softer, their voices hushed. The feast moves onward, yet something within them has stilled. As though the herring has reminded them of something quieter, something older, something beyond the glitter of feathers or jewels. The table glows faintly under the candlelight, the air heavy but calm, the moment wrapped in salt and shadow. And so the night continues, slower now, deeper now, each dish not only a taste, but a memory carried forward into the darkness. The candles have burned lower now, their flames soft, bending gently whenever the door to the kitchen opens, sending a hush of cooler air across the stone floor. The long table gleams faintly, silver dishes cleared and replaced in a rhythm that has become almost hypnotic. The feast has reached its deeper hours when the heartiest of dishes appear, those less about spectacle, and more about substance, more about grounding the body after so much surprise and delight. It is in this hour that the servants carry forward something that, at first glance, may seem unsettling to modern eyes. A sheep's head whole upon the platter, not hidden beneath pastry, not disguised by gilded feathers or layers of spice, but presented as it is, with only the touch of herbs, the sheen of slow roasting, and the quiet reverence of a dish that once held deep meaning. The head rests upon a bed of greens and roots, arranged carefully so that it seems almost ceremonial, as though the animal is both honored and consumed in the same act. The skin glows faintly in the light, golden in some places, darker in others, its surface touched by fire and time. The air around it is filled with the aroma of roasted flesh, mingled with thyme, bay, and a whisper of garlic, carried upward in soft curls of steam. The scent is heavier than the sweetness of past dishes, heavier even than the salted sharpness of herring. It is grounding, earthy, steady an aroma that settles into the hall like a lone note in a long song. You might pause here, imagining it. The eyes intact, their surface dulled by heat, no longer watchful but present, almost symbolic. The tongue, considered a delicacy, rests quietly within the mouth, awaiting careful carving. For many nobles, these were not strange parts of the feast, but treasures reabites that carried with them both status and meaning. To consume them was to show not squeamishness, but refinement, to demonstrate that nothing was wasted, that every part of the animal carried its place upon the table. The servants carve slowly, their knives gliding with practiced care. Slices are placed upon small silver plates, each one arranged with precision, each one balanced with herbs to soften the richness. The nobles receive them with calm composure, their hands steady, their faces serene. To modern sensibilities, it may seem unusual, perhaps even unapproachable. But here, in the great hall, it is an act of respect as much as appetite. The sheep's head is not merely fooded, is ritual. It is memory, it is proof of abundance and skill. Imagine lifting a small portion to your lips. The flesh is tender, softer than you might expect, touched with smoke and herb yielding easily beneath the teeth. It carries the earthiness of the animal, the warmth of fire, the faint bitterness of char. The tongue, especially, is smooth, its flavor deeper, richer, almost velvety in texture. For those who taste it, it is not strangeness that lingers, but depth of fullness that settles into the body slowly, steadily, like embers warming stone. Around you, the hall is quiet. Dish does not provoke laughter nor spectacle. It provokes reflection. Each bite is small, measured, unhurried. The fire glows in the hearth. Its light softer now. Its sound no longer a crackle, but a murmur. The music follows suit, slower, gentler, as though echoing the calm gravity of the moment. The nobles sit straighter, their gazes downward, their gestures minimal, as though aware of the solemnity this dish brings. For in the sheep's head lies a reminder of sacrifice, of survival, of the bond between humans and the animals that sustain them. It is a reminder that a feast is not only joy, not only laughter, not only wonder, but also reverence. It tells of a time when nothing could be wasted, when every part of the creature found its place at the table, when food was as much gratitude as indulgence. It tells, too, of a culture that found beauty in completeness, in honoring the whole rather than discarding the parts unseen. The dish is cleared slowly, the platter lifted with care, as though even in its passing, it carries a weight of meaning. The hall breathes again, the sharpness of herbs lingering in the air, mingling with the softer scents of wood smoke and wax. The nobles sip their wine in silence, the liquid red and deep, washing away the heaviness of the dish, but not its memory. And you, sitting quietly within this imagined hall, feel the calm gravity of the moment as well. It is not spectacle that stays with you, it is stillness. The stillness of roasted flesh upon silver, of fire burning low, of voices hushed beneath the rafters. The stillness of a feast that acknowledges not only the delight of the senses, but also the weight of life, the cycle of giving and taking. The quiet truth that beneath every banquet lies a story older and deeper than the feast itself. The night carries on, slowly, steadily, the fire sighing, the candles bowing lower. And with each passing dish, the great hall drifts further into calm, into reflection, into a kind of drowsy peace. The hall has settled into a rhythm of near silence now. The laughter that once danced beneath the rafters has grown faint, placed by murmurs, then by long pauses, then by nothing more than the soft music that drifts like mist across the air. The fire still burns, but it no longer leaps upward with youth. It is aged into embers, glowing steadily, quietly, as though content simply to keep the chill at bay. The wax of the candles slides downward, forming slow rivers along their sides. Each drop a small measure of time passing, a reminder that the night has grown old. And in this softened, almost dreamlike hour, the servants emerge again. Their steps are measured, their expressions calm, their presence like shadows moving among flame. In their hands, they carry something simple in appearance, yet substantial in meaning. The pig's stomach, stuffed with grains, herbs, and spice. At first sight, the dish is humble, almost unadorned, compared to the jeweled birds and the gilded pies that dazzled earlier in the evening. It does not shimmer with gold, nor glisten with sugar. It does not announce itself with feathers or with fragrance meant to astonish. Instead, it sits firm, rounded, its surface taut and pale from boiling, its edges tied neatly with cord, its form resembling a vessel more than a meal. And in truth, that is what it is. A vessel carrying within it nourishment, labor, and the quiet wisdom of those who knew how to stretch the bounty of land and field. The aroma is not sharp nor heavy, but warm and grounding. It carries the scent of oats softened in broth, of barley swollen with juices, of parsley and thyme folded into the mixture. There is a faint trace of pepper, a whisper of nutmeg, small reminders that even the humblest dish could be touched by the trade of distant lands. It is a scent that does not command attention, but rather invites it. The kind of fragrance that fills the air slowly, patiently, without demand. The servants place the dish upon the table, then cut it open with deliberate care. The skin gives way with a soft tear, and from within spills the filling grains, glistening with broth, flecked with green herbs, steam rising gently like breath into the cold night air. The sight is not meant to dazzle, but to comfort. It speaks not of spectacle, but of sustenance. It speaks of fields tilled by hand, of harvests gathered, of animals raised and tended, of kitchens where nothing was wasted. The nobles, seated in their silks and velvets, lean forward with interest. For though the dish is rustic in its roots, here, in the great hall, it becomes something more. It becomes a reflection of the bond between land and table, of the way even the simplest ingredients can, with patience and care, be transformed into a meal fit for kings. Each portion carved and placed upon silver is humble, yet meaningful. It reminds those who taste it that wealth is not only in gold, nor in feathers, nor in spices from across the sea. It is also in the steady harvest of grain, in the careful use of every part of the animal, in the quiet assurance that nothing is lost. You might imagine taking a bite now. The texture is firm at first, then yielding. The grains press softly against your tongue, releasing warmth and earthiness. The herbs lift the heaviness, adding lightness with each breath. The stomach itself, once the vessel, lends a richness that deepens the flavor, tying together the simplicity of oats with the complexity of life itself. It is filling, more than delicate, yet gentle in its own way. It settles into the body not with surprise, but with calm assurance. It reminds you of hearths long ago, of winter nights when such dishes carried families through the cold, of kitchens where nourishment was both necessity and care. Around the hall, the guests eat quietly. There is no fanfare now, no bursts of laughter, no startled delight, only calm chewing, slow swallowing, and the soft clink of utensils against plates. The dish has done its work. It has grounded the feast, brought it down from spectacle to substance, from wonder to reflection. The fire sighs again, a log collapsing inward, sparks glowing and fading like fleeting stars. The music, too, seems to lower itself as though the strings themselves are growing weary, content to drift into softer, longer notes. The air has grown thick with warmth, the sense of the night mingling smoke, wax, herbs, grains, all woven together into one heavy, calming tapestry. And you, seated within this imagined hall, find yourself breathing slower now. The weight of the feast settles over you like a cloak, not oppressive, but protective. The pig's stomach, humble yet hearty, carries with it the reminder that life is sustained not by spectacle alone, but by the quiet. Strength of nourishment by the steady rhythm of eating and drinking, by the patience of kitchens, and the wisdom of those who came before. The dish is cleared, the servants carrying the vessel away with reverence, as though aware that even simplicity has its dignity. The hall remains quiet, its voices subdued, its glow soft. And the night drifts onward, each moment slower than the last, each dish drawing you deeper into calm, into reflection, into rest. The hall has grown even quieter now. The air is heavy with warmth from the fire, layered with scents of grain and herbs that still linger after the hearty dish of stuffed stomach. The nobles sit back in their tall chairs, their movements slower, their breaths deeper. As though the rhythm of the evening itself has changed, it is no longer the early hour of spectacle and astonishment. It is the late hour of reflection, when dishes are received less with applause and more with calm curiosity. It is in this softened silence that the next dish makes its way forward. Carried carefully on wide platters, it appears at first modest, almost unremarkable. But as it nears the table, the form of the dish reveals itself small creatures. Delicate, their bodies prepared with skill, their flesh seasoned and fried. Frogs. In some regions of Europe, frogs were considered a delicacy, particularly in places where rivers and ponds provided them in abundance. To us now, the thought may seem curious, perhaps even unsettling. But here, among nobles, seated in velvet and gold, it was not strange at all. It was novelty. It was refinement. It was proof of a kitchen willing to seek beyond the ordinary. The frogs rest upon the platters like tiny offerings, their shapes still recognizable, though softened by cooking. Their skin, once slick and damp, is now crisp and golden from the fire. Herbs cling to their surfaces, parsley, thyme. A dusting of pepper and the faintest glisten of butter lingers along their edges. The air around them is lighter than that of roasted meats, lighter than the rich aroma of grains. It carries instead a gentle fragrance, fresh and clean, touched with green herbs and the faint echo of water, as though the ponds they once lived in have not been entirely forgotten. The nobles lean forward, their eyes calm, their hands poised to receive. The servants carve and portion with precision, separating small limbs, arranging them neatly upon plates of silver. The sight is unusual, yes, but in this hall, unusual is not unwelcome. It is part of the performance, part of the rhythm of a banquet meant not only to nourish, but also to intrigue. Imagine now that a small portion is placed before you. The piece is delicate, no larger than a finger, its surface crisp, its scent faintly buttery, faintly green. You lift it slowly, the texture light in your hand, almost fragile. You bring it to your lips. The crispness breaks softly beneath your teeth, yielding to tender flesh within. The taste is mild, almost gentle, less overwhelming than strong meats or sharp fish. It carries a faint echo of chicken, a whisper of the pond, a subtlety that is not meant to startle but to suggest. The herbs lift it further, giving brightness to what might otherwise be plain. It is not richness that defines this dish, but lightness. It is not heaviness that lingers, but delicacy. Around you, the nobles eat quietly. Some smile faintly, pleased with the novelty. Others chew slowly, their expressions unchanged, as though treating the dish as seriously as any other. There is no laughter, no surprise, no disturbance, only calm acceptance. For here the unusual has become expected. The frogs, small as they are, remind everyone present of the creativity of kitchens, of the willingness of cooks to transform even the humblest creatures into something refined. A fire glows steadily, its warmth soft against the stone. The candles flicker gently, their light catching the sheen of butter upon the small golden bodies. The music drifts still, its notes thin and slow, less song now than breath, less melody now than memory. The hall itself feels hushed, as though even the stone walls lean closer to listen, to take part in the calm ritual of eating. You, too, feel the stillness. The frog feast is not meant to astonish, nor to overwhelm. It is meant to quiet the senses, to draw them inward, to offer something small and delicate after dishes that were heavy, complex, or ceremonial. It is a dish that asks for no grandeur, only attention. It is a reminder that not all banquets are about excess, that sometimes the most unusual offerings are also the simplest. The servants move silently, collecting empty plates, their steps muffled against the stone floor. The air carries the faintest scent of herbs, the last breath of butter, the memory of ponds and rivers made distant by fire and time. And once the platters are gone, the hall feels lighter still, as though the dish has passed not only through the body, but also through the air itself, leaving only quietness in its wake. The nobles lean back once more, their movements slow, their eyes calm. The feast continues, but each dish now is less about spectacle and more about softness. The frogs, small and delicate, have reminded them of balance, of contrast, of the gentle art of ending a meal with grace rather than grandeur. And so the night drifts deeper, each candle shorter, each ember softer, each moment carrying you further into calm, into drowsiness, into the long, slow rhythm of rest. The night has grown old. The embers in the hearth no longer leap but glow steadily, a quiet bed of red and orange, sighing occasionally as wood settles into ash. The air within the hall is warm, heavy with layers of scents gathered across the hours: smoke, spice, herbs, the faint sweetness of honeyed wine, the deep earthiness of roasted meat. Above, the rafters are veiled in shadow, their beams etched faintly by the flicker of candlelight. The long table has slowed in its rhythm. What was once a stage of spectacle and surprise has become something more solemn, more reflective, as though even the feast itself is nearing rest. It is now that the servants bring forth a dish designed not merely for nourishment, nor even for novelty, but for wonder of another kind. A goose roasted whole, its skin deep golden, crisped by flame, glistening faintly beneath the light of candles. Its surface crackles softly when touched by the carving knife, whispering of the hours it has spent turning slowly upon the spit, its fat rendering, its flesh growing tender. The fragrance spreads outward in warm waves, heavier than the frogs, richer than the stuffed stomach, filled with the promise of depth, of fullness, of completion. For hidden within its belly are treasures, smaller birds' partridges, perhaps doves nested carefully within, their bodies seasoned, their skins browned, each one resting inside the larger bird-like secrets waiting to be revealed. It is a feast within a feast, a story within a story, each layer speaking of the ingenuity of kitchens that turn dining into theater. Imagine the moment as the carving begins. The knife slides through the crisp surface, breaking the skin with a gentle crackle, releasing steam that curls upward like breath into the coolness of the hall. The scent intensifies, herbs and juices mingled, rosemary and sage, pepper and a trace of clove, all carried on the warmth of escaping air. The first cut reveals not only the tender goose flesh, but something more, the small brown form of another bird within. Gasps ripple faintly among the nobles, not of shock but of quiet delight. The kind of murmur that passes through a room when expectation is exceeded by surprise. Piece by piece, the servants portion out the goose and its hidden companions. Each plate becomes not one dish but several, a layering of flavors and textures, a weaving together of flesh upon flesh, seasoning upon seasoning. The nobles accept these portions with calm composure, yet their eyes glimmer faintly, as though pleased by the unfolding of a small mystery. To eat this goose is not merely to consume, but to partake in a secret shared, a hidden abundance revealed at just the right moment. Imagine lifting a portion to your lips. The goose itself is rich, its flesh tender, yielding beneath the bite, its fat absorbed into the herbs, its flavor deep and sustaining. Beneath it, the smaller bird carries its own taste lighter, perhaps sweeter, its texture contrasting gently with the larger body that embraced it. Together they form a harmony of contrasts. Heavy and light, bold and delicate, familiar and unexpected. It is not merely food, but balance. An edible metaphor for layers of life, of surprises concealed within the ordinary. The hall is hushed as the guests eat.
Ow.
There is no need for laughter, no call for spectacle. The goose itself has spoken, quietly, confidently, in the language of flavor and form. The candles burn lower, their flames trembling softly, their wax gathered in small pools at their bases. The fire releases a final crackle, then sinks again into its glow. The music drifts, its notes long and drawn, a faint sigh of strings and wind weaving around the steady rhythm of slow chewing and contented silence. You, seated within this imagined hall, feel the weight of the dish as though it has settled not only into the body, but into the mind. The goose, with its hidden treasures, reminds you that feasts were never only about eating. They were about meaning, about demonstration, about the art of taking something familiar and transforming it into something layered, surprising, complete. It is not the abundance of the dish alone that lingers it as the gesture. The act of hiding treasures within, the promise of revelation. And so, as the plates are cleared, servants carrying away the remains of goose and dove and partridge, the hall exhales once more. A sense of completion spreads, soft and quiet, as though this dish has marked a turning point. The earlier spectacles of feathers and gilded beaks, the curiosities of jelly and frog, the solemnity of sheep's head and the grounding of stuffed stomachal, seem to lead here to this dish of hidden treasures, as though every part of the feast was guiding gently toward this moment. The air grows thicker now, but softer, calmer. The nobles lean back once more, their eyes heavy, their hands resting quietly upon the table. The servants move like shadows, silent and measured. The music lingers only faintly, no longer seeking to rouse, but to soothe, to slow. And the fire, dim but steady, holds the hall in its warmth, as if guarding it against the chill of the night beyond the stone walls. And you, too, sit quietly, the image of the goose with its hidden treasures lingering in your mind. You feel its weight, not as heaviness, but as completeness, as though the feast itself has told a story. And that story is gently approaching its close. The night has settled deeply into the stones of the hall. Air feels heavy, not oppressive, but full of warmth from the hearth, of quietness from the guests, of lingering aromas from countless dishes that have passed. The candles along the table are shorter now, their wax running thick in uneven rivers, their flames smaller, softer, trembling gently, as if weary of their own work. The music has nearly faded into silence, reduced to the occasional drawn-out note. No longer a song, but the faint suggestion of one. It is at this moment, when the senses are softened, when the body is near its limit, when the mind drifts between wakefulness and rest, that the servants bring forth a collection of dishes unlike those before. These are not meant to astonish with grandeur, nor to impress with hidden treasures. They're quieter, stranger, less about abundance, and more about sensation. A banquet of odd textures. On the table appear small bowls and platters, each carrying something different. Clear jellies, quivering softly in the candlelight, their surfaces trembling at the slightest touch, as though alive. Dried wafers, crisp and brittle, snapping with the faintest pressure. Almond pastes, smooth as cream, dense yet yielding beneath the tongue. Sugared fruits, sticky to the fingers, their surfaces glistening as if caught in dew. And alongside them, stewed roots and softened grains, so tender they nearly collapse at the edge of a spoon. It is a contrast of worlds hard and soft, brittle and yielding, sticky and slippery, each texture chosen not to comfort, but to remind the senses that eating is not only taste, but touch. For in these halls, to dine was to experience every possibility the kitchen could create. Not only flavors of salt, sweet, or spice, but also the way food moved upon the tongue. The way it broke, the way it resisted, the way it gave way. Imagine, for a moment, taking one of the jellies. It quivers between your fingers, cold and fragile, its surface slick, almost refusing your grasp. When you place it upon your lips, it yields at once, dissolving into cool sweetness, vanishing quicker than expected, leaving only a faint memory of fruit and sugar. Next, you try a wafer dry, brittle, snapping sharply as you bite. The sound is loud in your ears, a crack against the silence, before it crumbles into dust that melts almost instantly, leaving nothing but air. Then comes almond paste. It rests heavy on the tongue, smooth, thick, almost stubborn in its richness. Its sweetness, deep and quiet, as though meant not to vanish quickly, but to linger, to coat the mouth with memory. And at last, a sugared fruit, soft, sticky, clinging to the fingers, its skin resisting before giving way to syrup within. It is sweetness made tangible, something to be eaten slowly, carefully, as though it wishes to remain with you longer than it should. Around the table, the nobles eat with small gestures, slower than ever before. There is no need for carving knives, no need for servants to portion. Each dish is light, simple, taken by hand or spoon. Yet within this simplicity lies strangeness. The jellies that tremble, the wafers that vanish, the pastes that coat, the fruits that cling. The variety itself becomes a quiet spectacle, not in size or richness, but in sensation. The hall grows quieter still. The fire has nearly sunk into ash, its glow low and steady, its warmth more suggestion than flame. The scents in the air are softer, now sugar, fruit, almond gentler than roasted meats, less enduring than herbs and fat. It feels as though the air itself has lightened, as though the feast is exhaling its final breath. You, too, feel the shift. The odd textures are not meant to overwhelm, but to guide the senses gently into weariness. They are playful, but softly so reminding you of the fragility of food, of how quickly things dissolve, how swiftly they break, how easily they vanish. It is as though the meal itself is teaching you about impermanence, about endings, about how even the strangest delights must pass. The nobles lean back once more, their hands resting idly, their eyes half-lidded. Some speak in whispers, their words slow and drawn. Others simply sit in silence, their thoughts drifting elsewhere, perhaps already half lost to sleep. The servants move quietly, gathering the small bowls and platters, their steps soft against the worn stone floor. The music no longer plays. Only the faint crackle of cooling embers remains steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat slowing as night deepens. And so the banquet of odd textures passes, not with applause, not with spectacle, but with stillness. It is less a course of food than a course of reflection, reminding those present that even the strangest of sensations fades, that even the most delicate of textures vanishes, that all things, whether feast or night, must come gently to an end. You sit quietly within this imagined hall, the memory of soft jellies, brittle wafers, thick pastes, and sticky fruits lingering faintly. They are no longer upon your tongue, but they remain upon your mind, like echoes fading slowly into distance. And as they fade, so too does the hall itself seem to soften, to grow quieter, to dim, as though preparing everyone for the final moments to come. The banquet has nearly come to its end. The great hall, which once pulsed with laughter, footsteps, music, and voices, now rests in near silence. The candles along the walls have burned low, their flames small, wavering, and slow, casting shadows that no longer leap but sway gently, like branches in a quiet breeze. The scent of the feast, once so heavy and insistent, softened into something faint, lingering, like a memory that drifts further away with each passing moment,
The nobles, too.
have grown weary. Their velvet gowns and heavy cloaks seem looser now, as though the weight of fabric has melted into the weight of sleep. Some lean back against tall wooden chairs, their heads tilting softly, eyes half closed, lips moving only faintly with hushed words. Others fold their hands upon the table, staring quietly into the glow of the hearth, their thoughts far from the hall. A few still nibble on sugared fruits or sip from goblets, but even these gestures are slow, languid, more ritual than hunger. The servants step lightly across the floor, gathering what remains. They do not hurry. There is no longer reason for haste. Plates are stacked, bowls are lifted, and silverware is wrapped in cloth. Each movement quiet, careful, respectful of the silence that has settled. The great hearth fire burns low, reduced to a bed of glowing embers. They give no flame, only warmth, a soft radiance that fills the air like a gentle breath. If you listen closely within this imagined hall, you will notice how sound itself has changed. The sharp clatter of knives, the bold voices of songs, the heavy thump of footsteps all are gone. What remains are small things: the rustle of cloth, the sigh of a tired guest, the faint creak of wood as chairs shift beneath bodies ready for rest. And beyond these human sounds, the hall itself seems to murmur. The crack of cooling stone, the whisper of wind slipping through gaps in the shutters, the soft flutter of ash settling into its own stillness. Imagine yourself sitting quietly among them, a guest whose hunger has passed, whose senses are now full, not with food, but with atmosphere. The warmth of the room holds you gently, like a heavy cloak across your shoulders. The flicker of light soothes your eyes, soft, steady, always moving but never sharp. Your body feels heavier now, your hands resting without intention, your breath slower, deeper, in rhythm with the hall itself. The banquet has become more than food. It has become a rhythm, a slowing, a softening, a drifting toward quiet. The dishes were bold, unusual, strange. They startled the eye and tested the tongue. But now they are memories already fading. What remains is not their flavor, but their echo, the reminder that even extravagance dissolves into calm. Think back for a moment, to the swan dressed in feathers, to the peacock gilded in gold, to the trembling jellies, the spiced pies, the curious shapes and textures. They seemed extraordinary in their moment. They captured the hall with wonder. And yet, like all things, they have passed. They rest now only in recollection, joining the long parade of dishes served in centuries long gone, in castles whose stones are silent, in banquets no one alive remembers. And that is the way of history. What feels unusual, remarkable, even strange in one time, becomes quiet in another. The swan is no longer served, the hedgehog no longer displayed, the pies no longer hide live birds. Yet for one evening, long ago, they held meaning. And for one evening more here, now they live again in your mind, before drifting softly back into silence. You close your eyes, and the hall around you shifts. The faces of nobles blur. The gowns and jewels soften into haze. The heavy beams of oak above, the tapestries at the walls, the stone beneath your feet, all grow lighter, fainter, less solid. The fire glows dimmer still, until it is little more than an afterimage in your mind. The sound of whispers, the creak of chairs, the soft steps of servants, these, too, fall away, replaced by something quieter still. You are no longer only a guest at this banquet. You are drifting beyond it, carried by its rhythm, lulled by its slow fading. The feast does not end with applause, nor with a curtain falling. It ends as the night itself ends softly, gradually, like a tide withdrawing from the shore, leaving sand cool and empty, ready for morning. You breathe in once more, and the scents of the feast are faint, almost gone. Perhaps a trace of sugar, perhaps the memory of spice, but they no longer hold you. They slip from your senses as sleep gathers at the edges of thought. Your body grows heavier still, sinking deeper, your breath steady and slow. And in this rhythm, in this quiet, you drift. The banquet hall grows darker. The nobles are gone. Servants have left. The fire is only ash, faintly glowing. And at last, even the walls themselves fade away, until nothing remains but silence. A silence not empty, but full of peace, of rest, of the soft turning of time itself. You have walked through centuries tonight. You've seen dishes strange and marvelous, dishes long forgotten, dishes that were once symbols of power and pride, and now you leave them behind, as one leaves a dream at dawn. You carry no weight, no burden, only the gentle awareness that the past has passed, that its strangeness was once real, and that you have been, for a time, a guest in its fading memory. And so, with the last embers fading, with the last candle flickering, with the hall dissolving into night, you allow yourself to drift slowly, quietly, peacefully into rest. Not hurried, not forced, but natural, inevitable, as the closing of eyes, as the turning of R's, as the quiet rhythm of sleep. The banquet is over. The hall is gone. You are safe. You are calm. You are drifting, gently, deeper into sleep. The hall has vanished now. The echoes of laughter, the shimmer of golden goblets, the glitter of jeweled gowns all have dissolved into stillness. The tables have been cleared, the dishes carried away, the embers in the great hearth gone cold. The banquet, with all its strangeness and spectacle, has passed into silence. And here you are, resting in the quiet that follows, carrying only memory, carrying only calm. Let yourself linger for a moment in that quiet. You need not hurry away, need not open your eyes to the present just yet. The past still surrounds you like a gentle mist, not sharp, not demanding, but soft and distant, as though time itself is cushioning you. Think back to the beginning of this long journey, to the first step into the great hall, the sound of your own breath mingling with the warmth of candlelight, to the first sense of roasted meats, spiced pies, and delicate sweets. You have walked slowly, steadily, through each course of the feast. You have witnessed the swan, the peacock, the trembling jellies, the pies filled with hidden surprises. You have paused at each table, tasted the textures, felt the strangeness of a time so far removed from now. And yet for all their oddity, all their extravagance, each dish told you something not only about food, but about people, about longing, about the way humans have always sought to impress, to comfort, to celebrate. There was grandeur, yes. There was spectacle, yes. But there was also something human in each choice, a desire to create wonder, to stir curiosity, to show wealth or devotion, to make a moment feel larger than life. And though centuries have passed, though we no longer gather beneath the beams of medieval halls, that same desire remains. It lingers in the way we cook for guests today, in the way we light candles for warmth, in the way we tell stories over food. Different ingredients, different customs, but the rhythm remains. Now, gently, let yourself reflect on where you are, in contrast to where you have traveled. Your bed is soft, not the hard benches of the hall. Your room is quiet, not filled with voices and music. Your food, should you wish for it, is simple, familiar, comforting. You need not worry about eels baked into pies, or hedgehogs studded with almonds, or gilded birds carried through the air. Your life here and now is shaped not by the need for spectacle, but by the quiet pursuit of comfort, safety, and peace. And that, perhaps, is the gentle gift of history. It reminds us that the strangeness of the past was real, but it also reminds us how far we have come. It allows us to walk through candlelit halls without leaving our own rooms. It allows us to taste what we would never dare to try without lifting a single fork. It allows us to see the lives of others, nobles and servants, cooks and kings, not with judgment, not with fear, but with quiet understanding. So as this feast fades fully into memory, you carry with you not the weight of its dishes, but the calm of its echoes. You have seen strangeness, but it has not disturbed you. You have seen extravagance, but it has not unsettled you. Instead, it has lulled you deeper, soothed you more gently, reminding you that the past is not here to harm you. It is here to soften your present, to make it richer, to cradle you as you drift into rest. Close your eyes now, if they are not already closed. Let the images dissolve. Let the tapestries fall into shadow, the music vanish into silence, the stone hall blur into nothing. You are no longer there. You are here, safe, in the quiet of your own space. The pillow beneath your head, the blanket across your body, the gentle rhythm of your breathing, these are your banquet now, your comforts, your blessings. And with each breath you sink further. The world of swans and peacocks, of pies and puddings, of hedgehogs and jellies, drifts away like a story told long ago. You need not hold it tightly. It was never meant to be held. It was meant to carry you, to soothe you, to lull you gently into the arms of sleep. Sleep is here now. It waits for you, patient and soft. It does not demand, it invites. It does not force, it cradles. Let yourself step across its threshold, as you once stepped into the hall, quietly, curiously, without fear. And once you have stepped, let yourself rest. The banquet is over, the hall is empty. The candles are dark. The night has settled fully, calmly, endlessly, and you safe, warm, and at peace, are already drifting, slowly, sweetly, into the deep and gentle rhythm of sleep.